طفي الليت أحسن. Okay. تقرين chapter quality management. أي. أنا صراحة يعني كنت مفكرة أسويه بطريقة مختلفة case scenarios، بس قلت كنا أفيد لكم إنه يكون based on teach chapter، لأن teach chapter فيه وايد حكي. إنزين. بس لما تقرينا it's actually يعني organized، كل شي مرتب، بس كله subtitles تحت بعد. فإن شاء الله يعني presentation نحاول we summarize everything in the chapter. The only thing I didn't touch on اللي هو accreditation because it's a different topic. I feel it needs a separate lecture. إيه العام صح؟ Okay. فالoutline we start with a little background about quality management and the quality management systems that are used as standards and guidelines for laboratories. Basically, the most used one is the ISO 15189. Then how to integrate the ISO 15189 into a process model, the key components of quality management systems, and the approach to introduce a quality management system into your lab. So quality management definition in general, in all, like let's say all different specialties, is an organization-wide framework to coordinate management activities to ensure that the organization meets at all time the requirements of its customers and users. And the quality management system as a structured framework for ensuring this consistency in quality of products and services. So we'll apply this in the healthcare system, specifically the medical laboratory. So when we're talking about quality management system, quality management, so the lab is like we're trying to coordinate the processes that happens inside the lab, from the examination process, the analytical process, pre-analytical and post-analytical, and all the supporting processes, in order to provide the requirements of your customers, which are the physician, the ordering physicians and the patients. And so the system, the quality management system, should be established by the laboratory management, okay? In order to make sure we're meeting the requirements of the customers. So why we need a quality management system? So when the external quality programs were introduced, they showed that different labs, there's great variability between the labs' performance. So this variability, which can be attributed to the analyzers you're using, or also the variability in the lab, in the performance of the technicians and the system. All of this will introduce great variability. So this highlighted that you need to make sure that you're introducing or you're giving an accurate results for your customers. So you have to identify and meet the criteria for your customers at all times, and then you have to detect any changes. So any changes that happens in your performance, you have to detect those, and also you detect the changes in your customers' requirements. For example, you're using before you were using the troponin assay, okay, and then there is an introduction of high sensitivity troponin, which is shows a greater sensitivity, greater precision. So you have to be updated to know the changes in your customer requirements. For example, your treating physicians, your cardiologists might inquire about these tests. So you have to detect these changes by being in contact with the customers and trying to implement the requirements to adapt these changes, which is the high sensitivity troponin, for example. Or you can detect any changes in your system, things that happened in your system and led to, let's say, an what's to say, downgrade in your performance. Okay, you can detect these changes in your external quality program results and in your quality indicators and your audits. All of these will help you to detect changes in your system actually. So if you have a quality management system, it will help you to reach these goals. So the use of quality management system is to drive overall quality through organization wide customer focus and systematic continuous improvement rather than just a tool for achieving minimal acceptable standards. So you don't want a quality management system just to meet the goals of accreditation. No, you want to also focus on your customers, the treating physicians, the patients, and also you need to aim for continuous improvement of your performance. Okay, so how can we implement a quality management system? We need to have some standards and guidelines, which will have a better experience and evidence-based guidelines in order to make sure you are following the best evidence to reach your goals. Okay? So, of the quality management systems that are used internationally, there is the ISO 15189 and the CLSI QMS guidelines. I will focus on the ISO 15189. It's more common and it's more elaborated in TEATS chapter. Okay. So the ISO 15189 is established by the international organization of the standards. Yes, the organization of standardization. Okay, which is a network of national standards of 162 countries. And the standards in general, any ISO standards is developed by technical committees that is composed of experts related to the topic or the specialty you're developing the standards about. So the technical committee ISO TC 212 is it's for the clinical laboratory testing and in vitro diagnostic systems. It was established in 1995, and the objectives was to promote the quality and safety in laboratory testing and developed international standards for medical laboratories. Okay, and the first task of this committee was to create the ISO 15189. Okay, so before developing ISO 15189, there were two standards. One of them is the 17025. It was more technical standards for the calibration of the systems. Okay, and there is another standard which is ISO 9001. It's for the quality management systems in general. Combine these two standards, you will have the 15189, which covers the quality management system requirements and the technical competency, which is more, it's more beneficial for the lab. It has the technical requirements and the quality management requirements. So it was developed by professionals in medical laboratories, and it integrates critical sector specific concerns essential for providing medical laboratory services. So it will touch on different sectors in the medical laboratory. It will define the competencies required for a laboratory director. So what you require from a laboratory director, the competencies, the characteristics. It will focus on patient outcomes, but in the same times, it will not downgrade the accuracy, the need of accuracy in measurements. Like you have to have an accurate test results, running your internal QC, external QC, and introducing the proficiency testing. And in the same time, you have to see how this will affect your patient outcomes. Yeah, not just focus on the technical part. You have to know how it will affect your patient results. It will not only emphasize on the quality of measurements, the accuracy of results, but also you have to make sure you focus on the total service of your medical laboratory. You have to focus on, for example, um, providing of consultation for the physicians, for the patients regarding the results. You have to focus on the turnaround time, uh, in addition to the quality of your measurements. It uses languages that is familiar to the medical profession. It highlights important features of pre and post analytical issues and addresses the ethics for medical laboratory. So the different organizations like the International Accreditation Forum, the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation, and they all issued a joint communique, or let's say a phrase or a statement that any medical laboratory that fulfills the requirements of ISO 15189, it means that the laboratory meets the technical competencies and management requirements that will deliver technically valid test results. So if you're following 15189, most likely you are delivering an accurate, valid results for your patients. So the ISO 15189 can be used by governments. So the government will require the laboratory to use ISO 15189 as a guideline and standard for the quality management system, or it can be used as a tool for as let's say a private lab wants to improve its performance, so it can use ISO 15189 as standard and guidelines. So in order to use the ISO 15189, it's better to introduce it into a process model, which is, let's say, easier to analyze and to use practically in the lab. So the ISO 9009, which is talks about the quality management, it promotes the adoption of process approach when developing, implementing, and using a quality management system. So just make it into a process model so that it's easier to adapt. So what is a process? It's a set of interrelating or interacting activities that will transfer inputs into outputs. So this is a process model by the ISO 9009. It's a bit small, but if you can see, it has the inputs and the outputs. The inputs is the requirements from your customers, your physicians and your patients, and the outputs is your results, and it should result in satisfaction of your customers. So we need to introduce this process model into the ISO 15189. So when you incorporate this one into ISO 15189, you have to put your more familiar, let's say, terminology of the lab into this model. So you have the management responsibility, resource management, product realization, and measurements. So the laboratory management is the management responsibility, which will create a quality management system and use the resources. The resources will be your staff, your equipment, your agents, to carry out the examination process, which is the test process or the analytical process, for the which is called here in the process model, the product realization, to fulfill the requirements of the users. Okay, so this product realization or the examination process should be continuously evaluated, and once you evaluate, you have to introduce your improvement accordingly. Okay, so this is another model which is also available in TEAS. You can find it, which introduced or integrated the ISO 15189 into the process model. So if you read the ISO 15189, actually, it has like laws or guidelines specific to each, let's say, sector of the lab. And these laws or guidelines, they have like numbers, like sector or section 5. And under section 5, it has like 5.1, 5.2. And all of these sub sections are introduced into this process model to make it more practical. So يعني انت الحين نتكلم عربي زين. انت الحين بالمختبر عندك العينات تدخل المختبر، بعدين في المختبر انت تمشينها، عندك البري اناليتيكال، البوست اناليتيكال، بعدين الاناليتيكال، بعدين البوست اناليتيكال. وفي in this process you have also let's say supporting processes، مثلا reagents، ال QC materials، ال external QC، الstaff، كل هذه الأشياء يعني تحسينها أشياء مطشرة. إنزين، عشان تسوينها شوية بطريقة أرتب سويها process model. إنزين، process model تحطين أن ال users اللي هم treating physicians عندهم requirements mainly test requests. يطلب التست يدخل لاب يمر فيه الإكزامينيشن process. إنزين، الإكزامينيشن process فيها لازم تمر في evaluation و continual improvement, which is carried out by the quality management system, which is mainly responsibility of the quality the management lab management. إنزين، which will use resources, staff, equipment, reagents, QC. إنزين، فلما تحطينها بطريقة البروسيس نفس هذه، you can take ISO 15189 different laws or guidelines, you introduce it into the specific process. إنزين، فهني for example let's start with the organization and management responsibilities. في ISO 15189. sorry شيء اوكي اوكي في ISO 15189 one subheading or one guideline is it talks about the organization and management responsibility. So lab management should have defined rules and responsibilities that are documented and written so that they know what is their roles, what's their responsibilities. This is defined by the 4.1, which is part of the ISO 15189. Okay. Another guideline is document control. شنو document control في اللاب؟
مثلا events اللي مثلا إذا صار في مثلا incident report what happened the previous shift was there a change in مثلا recalibration or anything like that.
each test coming that's requested have to have a paper اي هذه ريكوردز، هذا part من الريكوردز. document control اللي هو you have to have شلون؟ SOPs. You have to have written documents that are it should be well written, it should be always revised, and it should be, you should make sure all your staff are reading these SOPs and are trained on these SOPs and they understand it. This is also one of your one of the requirements of the ISO 15189. It's under the number 4.3. Another one is the personnel, which is part of your resource management. So what is personnel? They're working inside the lab, the technicians, your staff, your biochemistry doctors, your lab managements, all are personnel. حتى الفورتر exactly. Everyone that works in the lab, they have to be competent. They have to have defined roles. They know their responsibilities, and they should undergo continuous evaluation and training. Laboratory equipment, reagent, and consumable. اللي هو your reagents, your analyzers. These resources, you have to have also SOPs that will explain the process of how to run these and maintain these analyzers. If you're introducing an analyzer, you should have documents about evaluation of these analyzers. What are the tests you're going to introduce on this analyzer? All of this under this 5.3 guideline from the ISO 15189. So it touches on different, نشوف في عندنا another example, identification and control of non-conformities, which is identification of, let's say, errors or incidents in the lab. So how we identify these errors? By writing it, يعني لازم to put إنه سواء غلط لا شو ما أكتبه ما أخذ action on it. You have to write an incident report. Incident reports. Like a punishment, it's just for improvement. Exactly. So the identification of non-conformities or incidents by writing incident reports and by keeping it documented and analyzing it for your improvement to detect errors or improvement that you can introduce into your process in the lab. And the corrective actions is usually based on your error. Yes. This is teaching them, and it's not like for you punishment. It's like لا هذا الشيء أخاف إنك تكذب. This is my I cannot write on أو إنه ما أقدر شنو قاعدة يعني. Exactly. أي exactly. إيه يعني this is a responsibility of the hospital and lab management to make sure to train the staff on incident report writing and reporting, its importance, how it's going to be used. They should know that it's not going to be a punishment against you. And it's actually a tool to improve the system, not to point errors to staff. Of course, there's errors that are due not due to faults in the system. Sometimes it's just, let's say, the staff is reckless, careless. Um, there, there's some error that is, let's say, it's due to the person, the staff who did this, this incident. يعني in this case, you have to write incident report, but sometimes there should be some, let's say, not punishment, but warnings. If especially if it's recurrent and it's not due to the system. Sometimes it's just, the staff is recurring, يعني every time he's doing the same error. And it's not something you can improve in the system. It's something related to his ignorance. This is a different scenario. But incident reporting actually is a tool that we should use to improve our system. اوكي الحين ثلاثة جرب اوكي اي هذه هي اوكي انزين. Now the key components of quality management system. So these key components are based on the core processes inside the lab, which is the pre-examination, examination and post-examination processes, which is simply it's analytical, pre-analytical and post-analytical, and all the supporting processes. So if we يعني the key components are all based on this process model. Okay, so you have to have the management responsibility, quality management system, resource management, your examination process, and the evaluation and continuous improvement of your system. Okay, how to approach a quality management system. Quality management includes everything an organization does to meet the needs and requirements of its users or customers, in addition to complying with regulatory requirements. So you have to meet your customer's requirement and the regulatory requirements, which is the accreditation or your government's requirements, in order to reach the quality management goals. So the ISO, they have a document. It's a general document that is titled Quality Management Principle, and it's applicable to the ISO 15189. So it has a description of 8 principles that support your quality management activity. So it's just a guideline of how to introduce a quality management system into your lab. Okay, so it has a general terms, but when you're talking about يعني a laboratory, you can take these terms and make it more focused on the lab. Okay, so the first principle is that you should have a customer focus. What's the meaning of customer focus? The organization depends on their customers. This is the definition from the from the document. The organization depends on their customers and therefore should understand current and future customer needs, should meet customer requirements and strive to exceed the expectations. So in the lab, we should understand the customer needs, which is the physicians and the patient's needs. You should have your panels of tests that is appropriate to the service that your hospital is providing. If you don't have, for example, a cardiology unit, or uh, let's take more specialized, for example, newborn unit, or what's it called, a neonatal unit in your hospital. You don't have to introduce all the, for example, the panels that are of tests that are required for neonatal testing. If you don't have, so you should tailor your service according to the service that the hospital requires. So the panels of tests, you don't need to introduce a test that is not going to be ordered by your physicians. And in the same time, if your physicians requires a new test or an improvement in your service, you have a test that is not up to their expectations or their standards, you have to meet their expectations. You have to communicate with them, see what's their requirements, what's their goals, what they need from you, and tailor your service to meet their expectations. So this means that you have to keep in touch and be updated to the requirements of different departments from your hospital. Okay, leadership is another principle, the second principle. Leaders establish unity of purpose and direction of the organization. They should create and maintain internal environment in which people can become fully involved in achieving the organization objectives. So if you have an organization, you have goals. And these goals, all of the organization, staff, resources should target these goals in order to make sure all of the processes inside the lab are in the same goal, in the same direction. You have to have leadership. Lab management should make sure that we are maintaining these goals for the expectations of the customers and regulatory requirements, accreditation or government requirements. This is for the leadership. Involvement of people. People at all levels are the essence of an organization, and their full involvement enables their abilities to be used for the organization benefit. So all of the people, all of the staff in the lab director, unit doctors, reception staff, technicians, مثل ما قالت إسراء, porters, all should be qualified and of course اي samples exactly اي these incidents يعني unfortunately there is a variation in the performance of let's not only porters and all staff. Uh, for mistakes, exactly, mistake happen. That's why you need to have continuous training, continuous evaluation, and also you have to have input from your staff. You have to know and you have to hear from them why these mistakes are happening. Maybe there's something that you're not aware of. maybe they can point to something that you didn't notice before. So you have to have people involved. You have to talk to them, communicate with them, make sure that they know that you're available for any inquirement, for any comments, suggestions. If you're involving people, you will have more, let's say, loyalty and recruitment in the work from your staff, rather than if you're just acting as a boss, just giving strict guidelines, orders, okay, without guiding them and being there for them and teaching them. Process approach, it's another principle from the document, which is it states that a desired result is achieved more efficiently when the activities and resources are managed in a process. So once you design something in a process model, it's easier to follow and it's easier to approach. Okay, so there is this CPOC diagram. Uh, this is a general diagram that can be used in a lab. It actually identifies your suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customer. It's the CPOC diagram. So it's يعني تشوفون it's a process. Your inputs عشان ثلاثة three tabs. Okay.
Just move the mouse. Can just move the mouse. يمشي مع شيء.
Okay. Okay. So we said there's inputs, processes, outputs, suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customer. So the inputs will be your suppliers will be your patients, your physicians, and your inputs will be your specimens, equipment, your agents, your staff, and the process will be the process of the examination or the analyzing the test results, which will be translated into outputs, which is the results or reports, and then will be introduced to the customer, which is the patient and the physician. Okay, so to make it more easier, I have an example as for the troponin test. This is a very specific example. I will explain it. So you have the troponin test. You want to formulate it or make it or integrate it into a process model to understand the whole process of testing for troponin and introducing any improvement in the testing process. This is a very specific example. Okay, so the suppliers will be your, that's very small. Okay, the suppliers will be your patients, which will provide the blood samples. Okay, your phlebotomist is also considered a supplier because they're collecting the blood sample. And the reagent vendors, since they are supplying your reagents. Okay, the equipment manufacturer because they're supplying your analyzer. This is a very, this process or this diagram is just a guide, and you can formulate it however you want. You can introduce, for example, if it's required, you can introduce your treating physician. If you want to take a more wholesome view of the process. Okay, in order to analyze the process from the beginning. So this is the suppliers. Then the inputs will be your blood sample. Okay, the test request from the doctor, the reagents for the troponin, and your analyzer. Okay, so you can, for example, put the reagent as a supplier because it's also considered one of the supplies in your lab. And you can also put it as a part of input since you're gonna use it to process the sample.
For controls and supplies, right?
You can add it in your model. Uh, Just it's just a way to organize your thoughts. Okay, so it's not a strict rule. Yeah, and you can include whatever you want. You can add as much as you want. The more you add, the more you cover. Okay. Process will be the sample reception and verification, sample centrifugation, analysis and result validation. And then the output will be the troponin result. And the customer will be the patients and the clinicians. Okay. Once you make it into a process, it's easier to cover all of the aspects in this process and find any, let's say, errors, faults in the systems and try to improve it. So this is very specific, but when you're talking about a whole lab management systems, it's difficult to make a process for just troponin, creatinine. No, it's not going to be like this. It's going to be more a wholesome process, for example, in general, how you're introducing your samples, how you're introducing your agents, your staff training. All of this, you can make it into a process, and then it will be interrelating, and you can once you interrelate these processes, you can easily, analyze them, introduce improvements into these processes, and find faults that might happen in each one, in each step. Okay, so this model or diagram is just a general model. It can be used even in different, specialities. حتى بال يعني أي مشاريع، أي مشروع ممكن يطبق هذا البروسيس عشان to improve their quality and their service. Exactly. إيه. Okay, system approach to management is the fifth principle. We should identify, understand, and manage interrelated processes as a system. So once you have your processes, your diagrams, you can manage them as a whole system. And this will contribute to effectiveness and efficiency in achieving your objectives and goals. So once you redraw the lab workflow system as a diagram, and then you can add your key processes and add supporting processes. For example, أنت تسوي workflow of lab process زين التست request sample input, processing of the sample, calibration, QC materials, internal QC and external QC, test results to authorization, and you can add whatever supporting processes into this model. For example, supply, ordering, inventory, papers, كل هذه الأشياء supporting processes that is not part of the main process, but it's adds to it. Okay, so you can add them to make your diagram, which is more easy to follow. Okay, so you can generate a map of key processes that are essential. Then another principle is continuous improvement. You should always measure uh, measure your performance and try to improvement. So how to measure it? Measure your performance. إيه هذه اوكي هذا different اوكي هو how to measure your performance. ايوه لازم يكون عندك external quality control او proficiency testing. You have to have internal audits and you have to have quality indicators. All of these you can all of these you can translate into measures of your performance. Okay, and once you have measures, you can rely on it to introduce your corrective actions, your improvement plans. Um, this is another model also that you can use to like a problem solving approach. Okay, you have to define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Also, you can introduce it in, like a model and apply it in lab setting to enhance your performance. Okay, so to define is to clearly state the problem and the performance gap, and then you have to measure it, gather the data of the problem. Okay, and analyze it. Use the tools like put your diagrams, analyze the data from your measurements, and then improve it. You have to find the solutions to improve your problem, and then you control it. Once you introduced your solution, you have to document it. You have to train your staff in it, and continuously monitor it. Okay, and the seventh principle is the factual approach to decision making. You have to have effective decisions based on your measures, as we discussed, the quality indicators, internal audits, proficiency testing. Okay, and you have to have mutually beneficial supplier relationships. Suppliers mainly manufacturers, companies that provide you with your analyzers, your equipment and your reagents. يعني إنه يكون عندك علاقة فيهم، تكوني متواصلة معاهم، إنزين إيه تعرفين يعني شنو الأبديتس، الأشياء الجديدة عندهم من your agents, new developments من suppliers. Additional key principles يعني هذه ال first 8 principles are general. It's applied to different systems, not necessarily the healthcare system, but these are additional key principles that are mentioned in TEADS that are more specific to the lab. You have to understand the variation اللي هو variation in your whole processes. في عندنا الاناليتيكال variation اللي هو بالانالايزر اللي هو انت تشوفينه بالكيو سي ماتيريال، انه يكون عندك الفاريشن you have المين والاس دي والريوزات should be within perform within or any violation of the QC rules you should take an action. The same thing should be applied to the processes in the lab. يعني أنت عندك system باللاب والله of introducing the sample into the lab. فهو في يعني أنت متعودة على system معين ما في delay، صار عندك في يوم من الأيام delay، هذا يعتبر نفس violation of QC rule. إنزين صار عندك مثلا turnaround time، ال turnaround time for التروبونين مثلا حاطتها 1 hour أو 90 minutes. إنزين any violation of this turnaround time طلعت النتائج ال turnaround time كان more than that acceptable، معناته في violation، في violation of نفس ال QC rules بالضبط. إنزين so you have to find out why this happened. You have to analyze, just like when your QC rules is violated, you will check QC material, check calibration, check reagent. نفس الشيء تمشينا بس على البروسيس، مثلا turnaround time، ال accept sample reception, whatever process you are measuring.
So process تبقى نفس البروسس نفس الكلام
قصدك
sources.
هو أنت هذه طريقة لما تحطها كبروسس، إنزين أنت you're analyzing it. يعني أنت أول شيء you measured مثلا الكواليتي indicators، إحنا عندنا من الكواليتي indicators ال turnaround time. إنزين فحق أنت تختار شنو turnaround time حق which test، فأنت you choose a critical test مثلا. زين مثلا troponin، إحنا عندنا turnaround time of the troponin. إنزين فأنا I expect مثلا 98 or 99% of my results to be within the turnaround time. زين طبعا ما صعب إنه يكون 100%. زين فأنا my performance throughout the whole year is within let's say 99%. زين suddenly في drop، صار عندي الquality indicator بدال 99% حق التروبونين turnaround time صار عندي 98%، في great drop not within my performance. زين إذا صار هذا drop أنا لازم أعرف ليش. زين ف I can take the ordering of troponin into a process. أسوي لها process. زين وبعدين أشوف وين ممكن صار ال error أو ال fault أو ال change. أي أيوة بالضبط. usually it will be evident. يعني إذا صار في major change يكون شيء واضح. مثلا صار في change بالستاف، النيرسينج ستاف مثلا. اي بالضبط، يعني يمكن ما ادري انتم قاعد تشوفون هالشيء باللابوراتوريز different labs انه قاعد يعانون مع النيو ستاف. اي بالضبط. اي يعني احنا مثلا عندنا اعتقد هذا الشيء قاعد يصير بوايد مستشفيات، في نيو نيرسينج ستاف في كل المستشفيات. فمثلا الدايناميك تيست من one of the most common dynamic tests اللي هو short synaptin. You need a basic 30 minutes 60 minutes samples. our lab staff, the technicians, they noticed إن many samples are missing. يعني يدزون البيزل مثلا وما يدزون الباجي. بالضبط. فكان في meeting في lab utilization committee يكون في heads of different departments أو representative from different departments. فwhen we mentioned this issue على طول nursing staff representative قالت إن عندنا إحنا مشكلة فعلا في nursing staff، إن هم they need training. وفي الغالب إن المشكلة منهم إن هم ما يعرفون والله they're not well trained in this specific process. فأنت تحط الميجرز external quality, your quality indicators and your internal audits to measure any faults inside in your lab. عادة ال external quality programs will measure the analytical process, and then pre-analytical, post-analytical, you can measure it by your quality indicators. تدخل quality indicators that will cover the pre-analytical with post-analytical process عشان you can cover the whole process and measure it and find errors in it. Once you find any errors and you want to improve it and you want to take a corrective action, you can use the flow charts, the process model, analyze it, and يعني you can break it down into a process model, analyze it, and find your solutions. وين كنا واصلين؟ cost of quality. This is also should be part of your quality management systems. All of the processes that we're mentioning have costs. Costs of preventing problems, cost of measuring quality indicators. الكوست مو شرط تكون money, it can be time. يعني الستاف لازم تجيبين عندك staff, you should train them مثلا على ال quality indicators. إنزين هذا كله يعتبر cost of training of time. انتي هذا staff اللي خذيتيه والله حطيتيه حق ال quality indicators راح يأثر لك على ال other processes. إنزين فكل هذا should be included in your quality management. وآخر شيء non-conforming events, it's simply اللي هو ال incidents. يعني you should have an incident reporting system that is well introduced. Staff should be trained on it and you should use it. Actually, you should take benefit of your incident reporting system. I will not conclude. البرزنتيشن شوية طويل والكواليتي أنا عارفة هو وايد حكي, بس أنتي من تطبقينه يعني إيه من تدخلين فيه باللاب راح يكون تشوفينه more practical. يعني هو لما تخلصين اي شوفي لما تخلصين ال R5 راح تثبتين في one lab. إذا كنتي في one lab راح تفهمين ال whole process أكثر. راح يعني أنتي تقعدين مدة طويلة راح تعرفين على كل ال details. أي